And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. You can get their podcast on all podcasting platforms. Mike Gill, Sports Fast Live, and the Eagles getting ready for the Vikings. We're going to get the breakdown on Eagles-Vikings. Andrew DiCecco is here today. Adam was on yesterday's show, so Andrew is in today. We're going to get all his matchups to watch in this game. What's going on? He was at the practice field today for the Eagles, and obviously, as we get ready for this game, the Eagles a slight favorite on the road against the Minnesota Vikings here. It looks like it will be Carson Wentz getting the start in the game, so you got that as well. We got so much to dive into on this game, Eagles and Vikings, and obviously the Eagles outgained in all 6 games this season. That is unbelievable to hear, Andrew DiCecco, and obviously a lot of talk has been about the problems with their offense. They've been outgained in all 6 games. And I would ask you, is this a defense that you think that the Eagles can figure out this weekend?
I do. I think this is a game where it shapes up to be a big Saquon Barkley game. If you look back at the previous matchups the Vikings have had, teams have had success running the football against them. So I don't know if they have the personnel up front. Now, they have players who can get after the quarterback, but when you're looking at Javon Hargrave, Jalen Redmond, both good pass rushers, but not necessarily as adept at stopping the run. So this seems to be a really good spot to get that facet of the offense going, which is much needed. And then once that gets rolling, as we all saw last season, it opened things up in the passing game as well. So I think this should be a game where they're able to bounce back.
Yeah, obviously, Minnesota has struggled against the run in some weeks. Atlanta really torched them against the run. That was a game. Pittsburgh had a good game against the run. So we'll see if Philadelphia gets going against the run here or gets the run going this week. Last night we saw a game in which a wide receiver had 23 targets. Now, we're not asking for that, but do we anticipate? We think A.J. Brown watched that game last night and was like, hey, man, what do you think of that offense over there? But can they get the passing game more fluid moving forward here?
Yeah, I think there's some things that they can do with, you look at the RPO, some play action, and just involving some of the preeminent players in that passing game earlier into the game plan. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley even on some of those wheel routes. This should be a spot where, based off of what Minnesota presents defensively, especially setting a lot of pressure, which is what Brian Flores tends to do, that should allow the Eagles to capitalize and see some one-on-one matchups. So I think, yes, I do believe that they can.
So hopefully the offense can get rolling here, and if you get a guy like Landon Dickerson, he was back at practice today, that should help the offensive line, because the offensive line has been a problem. Would you agree that this is part of the issue of, hey, why are they having trouble running the ball? The offensive line. Why are they having trouble passing the ball? The offensive line. Is that a big factor in why everything is kind of disjointed?
Yes, not in pass protection, but in the run game, absolutely. And context is important here because a lot of it has to do with the health, and they're not at full strength right now. So that's obviously going to impede their ability and hinder what they like to do foundationally. And we'll have to wait and see what the health status is this coming week. Landon Dickerson was out there Friday for the media-attended portion of practice, so that seems to be trending in a positive direction. But yeah, a lot of that has to do with health, in my estimation.
All right, Minnesota, obviously Justin Jefferson. Everybody listening knows who that is. They're another, if Carson Wentz is in fact the guy, it looks like he will be. How does the secondary kind of match up? Quinyon Mitchell been at practice all this week. He was there today. He obviously will be a big factor to have him out there. But Adoree Jackson, you wrote about it over at InsideTheBirds.com. Looks like they're going to go back to Adoree Jackson. How's that matchup in the secondary? Phillies corners against this very talented wide receiving crew.
Well, short of moving Cooper DeJean from nickel to the outside, which Vic Fangio has been reluctant to do, and he's poured cold water on that notion, the best option that they have at outside corner, opposite Quinyon Mitchell, is Adoree Jackson. That was the right decision. I thought that they probably should have stuck with Adoree Jackson. I know he missed the Tampa Bay game with the groin injury, but they probably should have went back to him. Keely Ringo's a third-year corner. He's young. I get that they want to give him the opportunity to try and put his stamp on that position, but it wasn't working out. And when both players were forced into duty against the Giants, Adoree performed better. So I think when you look at what the Vikings present from a skill position standpoint, you feel a little bit more comfortable putting a veteran who's in his 9th season out there to play with Quinyon Mitchell and the rest of the secondary, because there's not a lot that he hasn't seen. And, I feel like foundationally and I guess fundamentally, he should be able to give you more consistent play there. But make no mistake about it, Carson Wentz and Wes Phillips, their offensive coordinator, they're going to devise a game plan to try to exploit that matchup quite a bit. So they're aware of it, and it's not going to catch anyone by surprise. It's just about going out there and executing your assignments.
Yeah, Adoree Jackson, Vic Fangio mentioned that he will be back out there. Ringo was out there the last couple of weeks. If they go at Adoree Jackson, we'll see if they have to make adjustments in game. But obviously that has been a spot. What is your overall take on Jalen Carter, even healthy this year when he's played? I mean, a lot of people are wondering, hey, what are we getting? What are you getting from Jalen Carter?
He's had some moments where he's really flashed, but they haven't been as frequent as we've seen. Dealing with the shoulder injury is obviously going to hinder that a little bit, and he didn't play Thursday night with the heel injury in the game at MetLife Stadium. That had nothing to do with the turf that MetLife has. Jalen Carter said that they have to play there, every year anyway, but he did say he was close. He was out there Friday, and I just think that he needs to round into form a little bit. Vic Fangio earlier in the season mentioned that he needed to get into better shape, and I think the tape really reflected that. So this seems to be a matchup where he could get back to the dominance, the dominant player that he's been. And when he tends to get going and provide that pressure from the interior, the rest of the defense tends to thrive off of that, and that also creates more pressure from the edge, which the Eagles so sorely need. So I think Jalen Carter is obviously going to be a big key.
Yeah, we were talking with Brian McKinney earlier for Outside View, and you're talking about the struggles of the Minnesota offensive line, which is perpetual for them, it seems like. Is that an area where you think Philadelphia, even with some questions, and I would ask you, do you think there are serious questions in the pass rush? Should this be a week, even with questions in the pass rush, that they should generate some?
Yeah, well, look, I think Minnesota's done a nice job in addressing it. Donovan Jackson was a high draft pick, and they have some players there. They just haven't had a clean bill of health. But this should be a matchup where the Eagles are able to dial up pressure. And when I say that, I mean mostly from the interior, with Moro Jomo, with Jalen Carter, with Jordan Davis, Byron Young, and maybe even Ty Robinson, who played 19 snaps against the Giants and had that batted pass. But off the edge, that's a group that's going to be heavily scrutinized until there's a drastic, addition or a reinforcement on the way. They haven't had much success getting the quarterback. In fact, Patrick Johnson has their only sack. Zadarius Smith, who recently retired, had a sack and a half. But there's players there that have a build. Jalix Hunt is a player that Vic Fangio has talked a lot about. He's been very complimentary of. He doesn't offer hollow praise. So while that may not be reflected in the box score about his impact, if you're measuring it solely off of sacks, there's things that he's doing that is appealing to Vic Fangio. Josh Uche's a natural pass rusher. I've had a really good conversation with him Thursday about him sort of dialing in and trying to hone in on his power rush, because he's been more of a speed and finesse type of rusher, and his hand usage and things like that. He's been close, but we'll see. They have to be able to manufacture some sort of pressure, and that's where you might see Jahad Campbell or Zach Bond have to moonlight there just to assume some of those snaps that are lost in the absence of Zadarius Smith.
We're talking with Andrew Checker for today's Football at 4. You wrote a piece over at InsideTheBirds.com about how the defense is looking to return to form on the field against the Vikings. What are some of the things they've gotten away from?
Well, tackling, for one, tackling in space. I think there's been some untimely penalties, some lapses in coverage, and some of those are younger players like Drew Makuba. It's this Keely Ringo in the past where, he's giving up a 3rd and 12 to little Jordan Humphrey and forgetting to tag the Wan'Dale Robinson down, so the player was still alive. Those are just mental lapses that you don't typically see, and I think through the better part of 5 games, they've been a big reason why the Eagles have gotten out to, have been able to carve out 4 wins. It's been the offense that hasn't really been able to uplift it. But based on their most recent sample size, you're only as good as, your last game. there's obviously going to be a lot of talking points. Is it too young, or is it too young of a defense? Do they have enough there from a personnel standpoint to be able to sustain that throughout the season, which are fair questions, but I believe that they do. And more importantly, you have to believe in what Vic Fangio has. So there's been some uncharacteristic blips, but I don't believe that that's who they are. I think you're going to start to see more of a semblance of what they've been under Vic Fangio. And let's not forget, Nakobe Dean could factor in potentially defensively as well. And he's very much a tone setter. He is someone who tends to galvanize that group and get things going. So I think having him there potentially could also generate some big plays.
Who's going to be my next question for Andrew, which is Nakobe Dean. You know, what's the plan with him in your mind? Do they almost have to say, hey, we got to figure out something? And do they try to use Campbell more in that pass rushing role, or is that just not where he's at right now?
Vic Fangio has been reluctant. We talked about Cooper DeJean in that way. He's been reluctant whenever asked this season, usually saying not right now or not at this time. But he said it's possible this week that Jihad Campbell could see some reps off the edge. And I would also say Zach Bond as well. I think Zach Bond is clearly better in that area right now, though Jihad Campbell offers a lot of intrigue, and that was part of the allure of when the Eagles drafted him, having that versatility. But a lot of this is obviously going to be predicated on whether or not Nakobe Dean, whether or not the Eagles feel comfortable allowing Nakobe Dean to take on a larger role defensively. He played just 6 snaps on special teams against the Giants. And if he's able to do that, and the Eagles do have an embarrassment of riches at linebacker, that affords them some flexibility in how they can deploy Jihad Campbell and or Zach Bond. So I think that there's a big chance that Nakobe has a more significant role defensively this week. And I would expect that to increase as he continues to get some games under his belt.
All right, we'll see how it all goes down. By the way, the Vikings are 0-2 under Kevin O'Connell against the Eagles, so we'll see if he can get his first win. Philadelphia, a 2-game losing streak. If they lose 3 in a row, I mean, pandemonium will break loose here. What is the biggest matchup key in this particular meeting that you are watching that could decide this game, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm going to be looking at the trenches, and that's really where it all starts for me, watching how the Eagles' offensive line is able to respond. It's not often you can say an Eagles team under Nick Sirianni was kind of got out-muscled, but they certainly did Thursday night against the Giants. I want to see them respond by really getting back to that bully ball style that they want to play, dominating the point of attack, controlling the game, and dictating how the defense goes, and really blowing that line off the ball and getting Saquon Barkley going. It's long overdue, and I'm going to look to see. This is a matchup that on paper they should be able to capitalize on, and so it favors the Eagles on paper. We'll see if they're able to go out there and execute it.
2.5-point favorites. By the way, Hurts back-to-back losses after winning 18 of his previous 19, including the playoffs. Another loss. It will be the longest losing streak for him. It happened 3 other times where they've lost 3 straight for the Eagles, but that was back in 2023, the last time it happened. You can listen to the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. The Eagles and the Vikings, pregame at noon, kickoff at 1 p.m. right here on 97.3 ESPN. He's Andrew DiCecco from the Inside the Birds podcast. This is Football at 4. Andrew, thank you, sir.
Thanks, man. All right.